Today I'd like to focus on a particular topic, which is the topic of how to work with background thinking that just doesn't go away. So I'm not particularly talking about anxious thinking or self-critical thinking or what we call negative thinking, although they can be part of it, but just general mental static, chatter in the head as it is often called. So just as if you're hanging out with some people and they're just chattering away emptily, as people very often like to do, it's the same situation with our thoughts. Our thoughts are just chattering away completely emptily, and that's a fairly common kind of phenomenon. I'm sure we can all appreciate or relate to that type of a thing. So when talking about how to work with that situation, it's helpful to use Umberto Eco's idea that the core nature of the universe is that of an enigma. And this helps us to understand what's going on with the thinking process straight away. Because what we're trying to do with the thinking process, or what the thinking process is trying to do, is to solve that enigma. Thinking always has to try to solve everything, because that's what it does. Thinking is never content to let things be undefined or unresolved or enigmatic. It's exactly the same as if you've got an unbearable itch and you have to scratch it. Thought is scratching the itch of Umberto's enigma. So what helps in this case is to get better at relating to an enigma as an enigma, facing it honestly, and not automatically drifting off into this automatic attempt to fix it or solve it, which is a ridiculous thing, because the whole point about this enigma is that it's an enigma, and the whole point of an enigma, can't seem to say the word properly, is that it can't be solved. It wouldn't be any sort of an enigma if we could solve it. It would just be a thing that can be solved. Things that can be solved are very boring. Enigmas aren't. Enigmas are endlessly fascinating. And the enigma, which is the universe, is endlessly fascinating. Or we could also say life is endlessly fascinating, although not necessarily always in a good way. I mean, what would happen if we solved the universe? What would we end up with? Or if we solved life? So asking questions like that shows the ridiculousness of the whole idea of solving enigma, the core enigma of life. But we don't see that. We don't think about what we're doing. We're not aware of what we're doing as we think. It's like we're automatically scratching ourselves without knowing that we're automatically scratching ourselves. It's so habitual, we just do it all the time. We don't get anywhere from doing it. Most definitely we don't get anywhere from doing it. But at the same time there is an initial feeling of satisfaction or pleasure when we first start scratching, because it gives a little bit of relief to that itchy feeling. So the itchy feeling feels like it's being gotten rid of as we scratch. But the point is that ultimately scratching doesn't get rid of the itch. If anything, it makes it worse. We just get locked into scratching in order to obtain the very short-term benefit of feeling a little bit of relief. And that's like a lot of things. It's like an awful lot of things. It's like complaining. Like when we complain, at that first moment of complaining, feels good. It's addictively good. But then it doesn't take us into a good place because no one ever got happy by complaining or made anyone else happy for that matter. But there is that euphoric little feeling that we get as we start off complaining. It's almost as if we believe it's going to work out for us, in the sense that our complaining will solve something for us in a legitimate way. And of course it doesn't, because as we all know very well, complaining or moaning or whinging never solves anything. All it does is create a further problem to add to the initial problem. So there's the initial problem, and now there's the additional problem of my whinging, which can be a fairly significant problem if it goes on and on and on. It can be quite a dreadful problem in its own right, really. And yet, ludicrously, there is part of us that believes that, yes, I'm going to get somewhere by complaining, just for that first little bit, even though it never ever works out. Absolutely never. So we could complain our whole lives, which is a fairly easy thing to do. Well, once we reach an age where we start complaining, and we'll never solve anything by it at all, and yet we keep on unconsciously thinking that it is a good thing to do and that we can solve something. So the reason I'm going on and on about complaining so much is that it's exactly the same thing with thinking. In that initial first moment of thinking, there is a pleasurable reward factor. We think we're getting somewhere, and we never ever do. And such is our lack of attention to the whole business, that when a thought comes, and I don't mean a useful thought, a thought that is actually going to be productive for us, I just mean any old thought, an empty thought, there is always this little, no matter how stupid the thought is, there is always this little moment when you think, maybe there's going to be a nugget of gold in this little thought. And in any other field of human experience, if we were looking for something precious somewhere, if I was raking the garden looking for gold nuggets, and every time I turned over a pebble or a stone, I was thinking, maybe this is the one. Maybe I'm going to be rich now, because maybe I'm going to find this nugget of pure gold. And if I kept on doing this and doing this and doing this, I'd think, there's no gold here, I'm going to give up, it's a stupid idea. And we'd probably get to that stage fairly quickly. But we're thinking we never get to that stage. We always think every time we turn over a stone there's going to be something great there. Even to the very last moments of our life, it's guaranteed that we'll still be relating to each little empty thought that comes along, as if, maybe there's something good in this here for me. So that's a fascinating thing. Why, we might ask, are we so infinitely gullible with regard to our thoughts? If it was a human being, that someone we know, who came up to us and started going on and promising us something, and they never delivered what they promised, very, very quickly we'd see them coming. We'd see them coming a long way off, and we'd have nothing more to do with them. Why would you? After all, there's a learning process that kicks in, and that's a learning process we all have with other people. We all know a bullshitter when we see one, and we don't really want to have a huge amount to do with them. Why would you? But this does not apply to thinking at all, and that's that's the fascinating thing, that it does not apply to thinking. We never learn with thinking, and it's because we never learn with thinking, we never get non-gullible, we never wise up. That means the thinking keeps on coming, and we keep on entertaining it and being being a victim to the thinking. Now, one reason for this that we could say is that when a thought comes along, we take it seriously, or pay attention to it as if it's a serious proposition and not mere bullshit, is that we instantaneously become as small as a thought is. And so, because we have shrunk our perspective so much, we can't tell what's significant or not significant. We can't tell what's good or not good. It's as if we've sunk to the level of petty gossip ourselves. That no matter how petty the gossip is, it's still interesting to us. Even if it's unbelievably petty, we're still all ears. Our ears are sticking right out, and we just listen, and we want to hear that gossip, no matter how meaningless it is. So that's because we lose perspective. So thinking always causes us to lose perspective when we get sucked into the thinking. But saying all these things, saying what I have so far said, although it might be an interesting way of looking at thinking, doesn't help us to work with the thinking. Because in order to work with the thinking, we need some kind of practical thing. We need some kind of practice. And what this practice is not to, the practice is to go through life without trying to resolve things or smooth things out. Much the same as if you have a plank of wood and it's kind of all splintery and rough. We automatically think, oh, that's terrible, that's a horrible piece of wood. I'm going to get my sandpaper out and smooth it down so it's lovely and smooth. And so in the same way, our mind is like that, and he wants to smooth everything down. And there's lots and lots of things that happen in the course of our daily lives which are not smooth. They're kind of awkward corners, or they're things that aren't satisfactory to us. So it could be said that the great thing about life is that it will always provide us with these irritations. And that's got to be a fact. I mean, isn't life great at providing irritations? It's absolutely fantastic. So the basic practice which enables us to not be at the mercy of this inconsequential, low-level gossip type thinking is to start treating life as an opportunity to practice not sandpapering stuff or not smoothing stuff. And there's loads of examples we could give to show examples of what irritations could be, what irritations we could come across in daily life. And it could be someone that says something to us with a bit of an undertone, or they say something we're not quite sure what they mean, or is there a veiled criticism, or are they getting us in some way? So whenever that happens, straight away that's great, because that's an irritation. So then we can just pay attention to the fact that it's an irritation. We just be aware of that niggling sensation, and that's the itch which we're going to practice not scratching. Now, if someone comes along and really has a go at us and really insults us to the core and says something that really triggers us, that's not a good place to start working, because our reaction is too big. We can work with that later, but to start off with, we start with the very little minor irritations, the ones that niggle us, but only a little bit. And so for everyone, there's always a threshold of minor irritations that, although they niggle us, we don't necessarily have to try and fix them. So it's just a matter of finding out, each one of us, what our threshold is, and kind of sticking with that threshold and not trying to look for more trouble than we can handle, really. Even though trouble will come our way, we can't do anything about that, but we're not going to go out of our way to look for it. We'll just stick with the little irritations that life itself brings. The little irritations that life itself can be relied upon to bring. Because life is our friend now, it's helping us out with these annoyances. So other human beings are great for that. Some are greater than others. If someone's too nice, maybe that's not so great. If they're too empathic and pleasant-natured, it may be hard to get the practice in with them. And then, of course, there's other situations where, and the best way of talking about it is to say situations where things don't happen the way we want them to be. Now, this is another example of our ridiculousness, really, because we really do get upset when things don't happen the way we want them to be, as if the way we want them to be matters a damn. And as if it should matter to us, because why would that matter to us? Why would it matter to me that things happen the way that I want them to? How come I lose my sense of humour so abruptly and so profoundly whenever that happens? So again, this is a threshold phenomenon. Big disasters, I'm not going to be able to usefully practice with them, and we won't worry about them for now. What we're working with is the little tiny things that don't go right. There's so many examples of little tiny things that aren't quite what I expected them to be, wanted them to be. There's literally hundreds of them. And so when that happens, our natural tendency is for our mood to slump. We become dysphoric, we become unhappy. It's like, So that's really, really fascinating, the way that how we feel is linked to little inconsequential things happening the way we want them to, rather than not happen that way, as if it matters a damn. And with the inconsequential things, we can easily see that it doesn't matter a damn. If it's a big thing like I'm losing my job, or I'm losing a lot of money, or some big thing like that, we can see how it is that I'd feel sad about it. But we're dealing here with the realm of very, very tiny things. Maybe I'm catching a bus and the bus is late, or maybe I'm catching a bus and the bus is early and it goes without me. Or like one lady was saying to me, maybe I order some curtains on the internet and the pattern isn't the same as what it's supposed to be, as what I ordered. So all of these little things, which are really instances of unsuccessful control, failure as you might say, are really, really great. They're what we need to work with. And every time something like that happens, a little thing goes wrong, or I fail to control correctly in some way, or maybe I make an idiot of myself in some way, again a small way, I notice that feeling, and that's great. So I just notice that feeling, and that's me practicing with what is essentially a form of the core enigma of the universe, even though we don't see it like that. We don't tend to give these instances of failed control or of my will being disobeyed as examples of the core enigma of the universe. If we saw them like that, we'd respect them a hell of a lot more, quite possibly. But they are, because everything that can't be controlled, everything that doesn't fit in with my idea about how it should be or what it is a manifestation of the core enigma. And that's just another way of saying that it's a manifestation of reality. So absurdly, we live in a world which has nothing to do with reality. It's all about this pseudo world of things which we want to fit our way of seeing things, things which obey our controlling, which has nothing to do with the universe, but it's just our little bubble of confirmation that we create around ourselves. And if I can create and maintain this bubble of confirmation, then I am absurdly pleased, because my will is being obeyed, my controlling is working. And then when reality breaks through, I'm pissed. I'm having a bad day. I'm getting into a rotten mood about it. So working with the enigma in the first instance means treating all these instances with appropriate degree of respect. So instead of being pissed off, I'm actually rightfully respectful and saying, wow, there's reality. Isn't that something? I'm actually relating to reality, which is a hard thing to do because we normally don't do that at all. Okay, thanks for watching.